Hi, this is Don Boesch. I'm one of the co-instructors for the course Science for Environmental Management. I'd like in this brief presentation to give you an overview of my career and experience, particularly as it's evolved as a scientist who is engaged in advising management and environmental policy. This will help you understand my perspectives and maybe how they differ a little bit from those of Bill Dennison, the co-instructor. You'll see on this slide also I have my website listed. On that site you can get more information about the various adventures that I will be talking about, but also publications that I've made available on that site. I started off as a benthic ecologist, interested in the rich diversity of benthic communities in the marine and coastal environment because of their high diversity and the fact that all phyla are represented, and it's an amazing aggregation of different species living together. And much of my research was basic initially, but then it became to include also the use of these communities as pollution indicators. So for the first time, I had to think then about how the information is to be used in environmental management. I did a postdoc after I finished my degree and came back to the Chesapeake Bay region in 1972, right at the time that Tropical Storm Agnes had hit, causing a major flood, which lowered the salinity throughout the bay, had major effects, but it also caused widespread hypoxia or oxygen depletion and loss of seagrasses that opened the minds of folks that the fact that the bay had systemic problems that extended over the whole bay and were not just localized. And then that launched a variety of studies related to that were the precursor of the present Chesapeake Bay program. As a young scientist, I was asked to do a synthetic piece of work to actually write a book about the effects of oil spills. So it required that I summarize literature or interview scientists, but also had to make this study relevant to environmental policy, or energy policy, I should say. That was a great experience as a young scientist. And as things developed in the later 70s, we had opened up areas off the coast of the U.S. for offshore oil and gas exploration. And I was involved in baseline studies related to that in the mid-Atlantic, and eventually then we're transitioning to experiments, which would give us some predictive opportunity to understand effects rather than just measuring changes based upon the baseline over time. I was able in the late 70s and early 80s to go to China as one of a delegation of U.S. scientists, the first group working on Chinese oceanographic vessels that gave me a lot of experience not only about our government but the Chinese government and its authoritarian nature and difficulty that my scientific colleagues had in getting things done. I went down in 1980 to take on a leadership position, administrative position on the Gulf Coast. Got involved in starting a team project on the dead zone of the Gulf of Mexico, the large area of hypoxia that helped describe its size, dimensions, when it occurred, and also what are the factors that were causing it. Also led a major national synthesis on the long-term effects of offshore oil and gas development, and was involved in some studies related to the effects of discharges from that development, not oil spills, but routine discharges of drilling mud and produced waters. Large issues were coming to the fore then related to the rapid deterioration of the Mississippi Delta and its restoration, experience in that very contentious set of issues. For the first time I also got involved in National Research Council committees. National Research Council is the action arm of the National Academies of Science and Engineering. So got to the point where I actually led assessments of the marine environmental monitoring capabilities that existed in the nation and the national coastal research strategies at a national level. Back to the Chesapeake. I came in 1990 to head University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and I found a really remarkable transformation from the 10 years that I was gone. So the Chesapeake Bay program has then thoroughly established and had a number of very high-level agreements and goals. Had a large monitoring program, had extended into all over the watershed, not just the estuarine environment, and that it lacked, though, what I would call, when we're talking about an adaptive capability, that you really use monitoring information to help you fine-tune your management approaches and improve them over time. That's in part led to the fact that program has missed a couple of important goals over time that led now to some mandatory requirements and a whole set of issues related to that. There was a number of hot button issues that I got in the middle of. One is this Pfiesteria, the so-called cell from hell, a dinoflagellate that presumably was involved, and it could be other dinoflagellates, other organisms as well, involved in some human health issues related to, ostensibly related to nutrient over-enrichment. Got involved in the controversies related to restoring not only blue crabs but oysters in the bay, as well as this more recent challenge that we have of mandatory requirements using total maximum daily load levels, the so-called TMDLs. So in addition to doing the work in the Bay, because I had an interest and because I had a reputation, I guess, in doing this, I've been involved in leading assessments of scientists elsewhere, including going back to Louisiana and leading an external group to help them tell the hard truth about the reasons of coastal wetland loss and the management options before them. Worked on Florida Bay to resolve some controversies among scientists. This is the bay at the tip of the Florida Peninsula, and that led to some further National Research Council activities on Everglades restoration. Led a national assessment on harmful algal blooms in terms of what we knew, but also what we needed to do in terms of making national investments. In the 1990s, there began an interest in having a national commission on the oceans, and there were actually two commissions, and I involved as an advisor to both, the National Ocean Commission, the governmental commission, and another sponsored by the Pew Charitable Trust that I've laid out an agenda which has now underpinned the emerging ocean policy for the nation that you see being developed under the Obama administration. Got involved in trying to also resolve some scientific controversies about eutrophication, nutrient over-enrichment in the Baltic, particularly in Sweden, where they were feuding scientists on the side of nitrogen as the limiting factor versus phosphorus, and helped try to let's add some cold light of reason on that. And then, all because there was a national climate assessment that was first done right at the in the early 2000s time frame, and it was done right at the end of the Clinton administration, and was involved as one of the authors of a report on a large report assessing the impacts of climate change in the U.S. That led to continued engagement on climate change issues at a variety of levels, including being the scientific advisor for the Maryland Climate Change Commission. That actually has had some major policy impact related to state policy regarding greenhouse gas emission reductions, as well as preparing for climate change through adaptation strategies. Involved in another federal level study called Climate Change Impacts in the U.S., which produced a report in 2009 that further assessed the national consequences of climate change. And then that led to engagement in a very extended National Research Council effort called America's Climate Choices, that involved not just scientists, but former political leaders, business leaders, economists, and the like, thinking about making recommendations for national policy options, choices rather than prescriptions, one particular set of pathways. The next big stage that I had an opportunity to play on came as a result of a disaster. These things often happen as a result of disasters. I was appointed, because of my previous experience in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as related to offshore oil and gas, I was appointed by the President Obama, in 2010 to serve on the National Commission that studied the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, that had the objective of really focusing on what the cause of that accident was, what can be done to prevent similar or reduce the risk of similar activities, and touched on issues related to oil spill control, containment, as well as environmental impact assessment. It really kind of took me in more to an engineering and policy standpoint, though, which was a very fascinating experience involving lots of attention, media attention, hearings, and and deliberations on C-SPAN, and as the picture here shows, personal meetings with our commission and with the president and his cabinet officers. Very high profile with a short deadline. Again, helping to focus my attention on what it might need, managers might need, policymakers might need to make decisions. Not always like what we think of as scientists they should need. What they actually do need and how to respond to those needs is something we have to learn. So anyway, that's